This summer, Johnsonville reminds everyone to get their sausage family together to enjoy some plump, juicy brats around the grill. Because at Johnsonville, we don't make sausage, we make family and sausage.
National League Central rivals go head-to-head this weekend when the Pirates face the Cubs at Wrigley.
Swing and a miss, he struck him out.
The pregame at 3 Eastern, first pitch at 4, Saturday on ESPN Radio and the new ESPN app. This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hi, it's Greeny. Thanks for checking out the podcast. What a really interesting day this was with plenty of follow-ups of Mayweather and Pacquiao. Would you pay money to see a rematch between those two? George Foreman with great perspective on boxing of all sorts. Isiah Thomas on his new role with the WNBA's New York Liberty. And don't miss an in-studio conversation with baseball legend Pedro Martinez.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Should be an interesting day today, including George Foreman. Former heavyweight champ, the legendary George Foreman, 8:30 Eastern time on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. I'll be very curious to get his perspective. Mm-hmm. He's the guy who once postponed because of injury. Right. One of what proved to be, and what everyone knew was going to be, one of the biggest fights of all time. And that seems especially timely right now with the discussion about the fight this past weekend and should it have been postponed and everything else. Just quickly on the Hawks assist numbers, and then we'll get to the fight here. I asked the question, and Hembo jumps to the task. The Hawks led the NBA in assist percentage this season at 68%. And I just love the way they play. They had, again, 30 assists on 37 made field goals last night. That's, what'd you say, 81%? 81%, yeah. They led the league in assist percentage at 68%. They went 10-1 this season when assisting on at least 80% of their field goals. The NBA average is 58%. So that's pretty big numbers. All things considered. And so a great night last night for the Hawks.
Yeah, and the way the Hawks play. This is the way they're going to win, is the way they play. Again, in none of their games they have anybody scoring over 30 points. I mean, it's at the Spurs of the East, as they say.
Okay, we're Mike and Mike. So to the fight. Yesterday, at some point, Floyd Mayweather texted Stephen A. Smith and said, I will fight him in a year after his surgery. Speaking of Manny Pacquiao. And look, I mean, if you're Floyd Mayweather, there's no reason not to say that. I'm not criticizing Mayweather for saying that. But the notion that anyone is entertaining a rematch between these two fighters, and if in fact it is based upon the fact in any way that Pacquiao had a shoulder and thus was not at his best, I'm just flabbergasted. You know, the quote, I looked it up here. The quote has long been attributed to P.T. Barnum, but apparently it really was not Barnum who said, there's a sucker born every minute.
Right.
But someone said it, and boy, does it seem to apply here. Can you imagine anyone getting excited, much less generating hundreds of millions of dollars, to see those two guys fight again?
Well, what if Pacquiao's healthy this time? Maybe we'll get a better fight. Isn't that what we're going to push?
I'm begging you to be kidding.
But what if he's healthy? Isn't there going to be a difference? You expect a different Pacquiao at that point? Isn't there at least a little bit of intrigue with that?
None.
If his shoulder was in fact hurt. Now, again, what we don't know is if it was torn to need surgery before he got into the ring or he finished it off while he was in the ring. But if he gets that surgery and it's close to 100% again, no interest at all?
None.
None?
If that fight was in my backyard, I would close the drape so it didn't disturb me.
That's a cozy line right there.
Are you telling me you'd buy that fight? If they put that fight on pay-per-view for $29.99, would you buy it?
I'm not going to say yes right now, but I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say no. I'm one of those people P.T. Barnum was probably talking about.
I will tell you right now. I'll say this right now. I'm not buying another fight. I will not pay to watch another fight. And look, this is my job to analyze these things. So I will obviously talk about them. I'm not saying I'm morally offended by it. I will not pay to watch another Manny Pacquiao fight under any circumstances.
I just know
what those guys did was pathetic, and it does, in my opinion, even if it doesn't legally constitute defrauding the public, it is absolutely ripping off the public.
I just know the sport of boxing, so for anybody to be overly shocked that you feel like you didn't get your money's worth, that's on you. You know what? Every time we talk about boxing, whether it's you and me, whether it's two people on the street, know the corruption in that sport. Okay, it's pretty evident. So if you're going to lay down your money for a boxing pay-per-view, if you don't understand the risks, that's on you. I knew full well when I laid down the $100. Who knows what's going to happen in this thing? Who knows? Because it's boxing.
Well,
but
there's another famous expression.
I still did it.
There's another famous expression.
And it is?
It has something to do with fooling me once and who the shame is on, and fooling me twice and who the shame is on.
I knew it the first time. So I certainly would know it the second time. But just think, Greeny, he might be healthy now. Maybe you'll give him a better fight.
Yeah. Maybe they'll let him use all those things that were helping him be a great fighter in the first place.
We'll see if the class action lawsuit comes to an end before that, which inevitably you knew was going to happen and has happened and will continue to grow, I'm sure.
All right, now let's get to Dan Rayfield, who's ESPN's senior boxing writer, was on SportsCenter talking about all of this business with Pacquiao's shoulder injury, and did they disclose it, or did they purposely not disclose it? Was that meant not to give Mayweather an advantage? What were the reasons why the box was checked incorrectly? His people are saying, Pacquiao, we read you all the stories yesterday, that it was just an innocent mistake. Here's Rayfield on what all this means.
Had he notified them 2.5 weeks earlier when the injury occurred, I spoke to Cisco Aguilar, who was the Nevada State Athletic Commission chairman, and he said if they had told us ahead of time, our doctor would have worked with them, and if everything was okay in camp and things were moving along, and of course the medication that he was seeking met all the standards of their anti-doping rules, they probably would have allowed the shot to happen. He would have had the anti-inflammatory, and perhaps he would have performed better having that prior to the fight.
There's no doubt that, I read that as well from the Nevada Boxing Commission. They weren't informed. Their whole deal was, you didn't check the box. We didn't know. The medication would have been fine. USADA had approved it when the Pacquiao camp went to USADA and said, we got a shoulder, we want to get a part of the medication is the Toradol, the shot. They approved it then. You knew it would have been approved before the fight had the Pacquiao camp disclosed it to the Nevada Boxing Commission.
Is Pacquiao going to be in trouble?
Why he said no on that box, I have no idea. He's going to face some kind of disciplinary hearing most likely because of it. I don't think it's not like they're going to suspend him for, years or fine him an astronomical amount of money, but the commission needs to have some answers to why he did what he did or what he didn't do, which was check off the proper box on his medical questionnaire.
Again, they're going to tell you, they already started it. That's the line they said, oops.
Yeah, it is. It's oops. It's a $400 million sporting event, and the answer, an acceptable answer was, oops.
We've only had to do this how many other times?
Our bad.
To fill out a medical form. Oops. You know what? Didn't know it said that. Wasn't really sure what that one said. But you know what? As they're all giggling about it, but they're just saying everybody keeps saying the same thing. Keep saying the same thing.
Yeah.
We just forgot.
No matter what happens, just keep saying the same thing, and maybe we'll find a way to make a few more $100 million because people are just stupid enough to
People
fall
are going to
for
do it. Listen, there's no way it'll be as big as this one, the money grab, but it's still going to be a lot of money. You know it is.
Yeah, Bob Aaron, we first have to make sure the rotator cuff heals well. I'm confident the surgery will work, and if it does, why wouldn't we entertain a rematch? If they really want to do a rematch, and they really want to do something for the sport that is meaningful, and again, Mayweather, whatever you think of him, I don't blame any of this part of it on him.
Absolutely not.
In fact, his post on Instagram was 19 years in the fight game and I've had one excuse. Quote, don't have an excuse. End quote. Winners win and losers have excuses. I get why Mayweather put the fight on regular TV. Just put the fight on TV. Get paid an amount of money to do the fight and then fight. But if this fight goes on pay-per-view, I genuinely believe they will have a hard time selling it. I really do. I just can't believe that after all of this, that people will still line up to buy that fight.
Well, as I said, it will be much less. It's just a matter of where it ends up and what price they would put it. I cannot believe we're actually talking about this a year away, about pay-per-view pricing. People will still buy it. They'll still make millions. I don't know what a network would offer them in guaranteed money, but do we think that anybody in either camp is going to sit down and say, okay, guys, you know what? We're not going to make very much money here, but let's do what's right for the sport.
No, of course not. Of course not. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm suggesting that might be their best way to go because
why?
Because I'm not sure people will buy the pay-per-view.
But
if you have something that you're going to try and sell to people and people don't want to buy it, you may be better off getting some guaranteed money up front from ESPN, who would certainly televise it, or Fox. Or
then it depends on
would.
the money, because you know what? You say that right now. A year from now, people are going to buy it. People are going to buy it. Again, not at this level.
And not at this price. No one's spending $100.
I completely agree with that. But instead of Mayweather making $100 million, could he make $80 million? $70 million? No networks.
Well, I think Mayweather made like $200 million.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry. I meant $200 million. So in this one, maybe it's down to $80 million. ESPN, Fox, CBS, they're not giving him $80 million.
No,
they're not. So he still could make way more in a pay-per-view, even if he dropped down that much of a percentage. So for him not to even think about putting it on free TV.
But even that, see, I think that this fight from a financial standpoint has so skewed our perspective. Hembo, what has Mayweather made? What was his biggest individual payday before this? You know, this one, $200 million is so out there.
Right. The deal with Showtime, I believe, was 6 years and $200 million for 6 fights. I'm sorry, 6 fights, $200 million. That was his deal with Showtime.
Even I can do that math.
Look at
right?
you.
That's $33.3 million per fight.
Wow, that's nice.
So that's a ways down from the number you're talking about. It's also, but you're right. It's much more than anyone is going to guarantee.
That's exactly right. And these guys are about maximizing their dollars, not about, you know what, this is probably, for Mayweather, this may be my last fight. I'm going to do what's right for the sport of boxing. I mean, that's more laughable than the whole talk about the rematch.
In my opinion, it's Pacquiao who comes out of all of this looking terrible. Just terrible. And his side of it that comes out looking terrible.
I don't think he looks terrible. I don't. I think it's a guy toward the end of his career that had an injury that tried to fight through it, and part of the reason was a monster payday. I think a majority of people out there would have said it yesterday. And if you don't believe me, that's fine. I think a majority of people would have done the exact same thing.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Guys, when you buy your clothes at DXL, you look good. But you feel like a rock star. So if you want to look and feel like you'll find all the brands you love, waist size 38 and up, all in one awesome store. DXL, you're looking good. Right now, select dress shirts are just $49.50 each when you buy 2 or more.
The best of Mike and Mike.
One of the things that I say here frequently is that the first casualty of emotion is reason. And that is fully understandable, and I think it applies to all of us equally. On subjects upon which we feel emotional passion, it is very difficult to be reasonable. And so it's not a criticism because I think all of us do it. So I was reading a lot about this Frank Clark story yesterday. Yeah. I'll give you the brief synopsis of it. I think most people probably know. Frank Clark was a very good player, a defensive lineman on Michigan, who got thrown off the team November 17th, 2 days after he was arrested. The Seattle Seahawks made him the 63rd overall pick in the draft the other day. Clark, they said they had done their own investigation and found that Clark, in their view, had not struck his then-girlfriend. Now, if you read the lengthy stories that were in the Seattle Times and then on ESPN.com yesterday, there were witnesses in a hotel to events that certainly seemed to add up to a case of domestic violence. Frank Clark was thrown off the football team at Michigan 2 days after the arrest. 2 women say they found his then-girlfriend sprawled half-naked on her hotel room floor, barely moving the night of his arrest on charges of domestic violence. 2 witnesses who were in the room next door at a hotel and water park resort in November say they heard loud banging, yelling, and screaming coming from the room. One of the witnesses says she immediately sensed something was wrong, pounded on the door until Clark opened it. She says that an enraged Clark tried quickly to slam the door in her face, but she caught it before it could close. All this played itself out, and he was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks the other day. And there's enormous criticism of the Seahawks because they say they conducted, quote, an extensive investigation and felt confident that Clark had not struck his girlfriend. They acknowledge, however, their investigation did not include interviews with any witnesses other than Clark. So they did not interview his ex-girlfriend, and they did not interview any of the witnesses at the scene. So there's enormous criticism of people saying, well, how in the world can you say that you did an extensive investigation if it seems you didn't talk to anybody but him? Now, I don't have any details on the investigation, and I'm not in a position. It certainly sounds like they went into this saying, we want to draft a player, right? And let's figure out a way to draft a player. And if that's the case, then that's fine. I mean, that is what it is, and everyone can judge it as they choose to. But here's the part of it where I say it's hard to inject reason, okay? So let's just say for the sake of discussion, we have a player who was found guilty of an act of domestic violence in his college career. Is the answer he should never be allowed to play in the National Football League. I'm asking that as a question. Is that our response? If it is, I'm cool with it. I'm wide open to hearing that argument. You know what? It's a despicable act. You have correctly and passionately on our show described it as cowardly and all of that, and I fully agree and support everything you said and the tone in which you said it. It's a despicable act and one of the absolute worst things I can think of that a person can do. That said, he's not in jail. He is a young person looking to play football. Should he not be allowed to play football? And if he is going to be allowed to play football, is there a problem with a team drafting him? He's a good player. So what I'm asking, and I understand that by asking the question, sometimes it sounds like I'm taking a position. I'm trying to ask a reasonable question. What is the reasonable response? To take him out of it for this moment. What is the reasonable response to a football player who commits an act of domestic violence in college and is then eligible for the draft? Should he not be allowed to be drafted? Should he not be allowed to play in the NFL ever, or have to serve some sort of suspension that carries over to the NFL? What is the appropriate reaction?
Your comfort level, the team's comfort level, I think. And I don't mean, please don't misunderstand that I mean your comfort level with domestic violence. There's no comfort level with domestic violence, nor should there be. But it's, I heard John Snyder, the GM, on with Brock Heward out in Seattle. I heard that interview. And John, talked about the football side of it, and what a great pass rush he was. And they're talking to people about Frank Clark and certainly his upbringing, a mother who had drug problems in L.A. He grew up in a horrible place, and she finally put him on a plane and sent him to Ohio, to a relative there, to be raised there, to get him away. So all that said, still, to me, obviously doesn't excuse domestic violence. So you look at what Seattle did. They talked to other people about the character of this player, but as you mentioned, they didn't talk to any of the other witnesses in this at all. The people in the other room, the brothers of the young lady that I believe were in the room. One was in the bathroom. One was a younger kid in the room when this was going on. So that's what I think. So you look at the law part of it. What did he plea it down? I believe.
Yes, that's what I was looking for, and I apologize. I didn't have it in my initial notes here. He was initially charged with 2 first-degree misdemeanors for domestic violence and assault. 3 weeks ago, he pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of persistent disorderly conduct. Right. And a plea deal with prosecutors. Was given a $250 fine. No further jail time beyond 2 days already served. Will not have a domestic violence conviction on his record. Police and prosecutors, this is now from the Seattle Times, police and prosecutors could not be reached Monday to explain why Clark was offered a plea deal or to detail the extent of any follow-up investigation. Again, John Schneider, the general manager, said the team investigated the matter thoroughly and that he would never have drafted Clark if they believed he had struck his girlfriend. This then goes back to comments he had once made. John Schneider had once made comments saying that he would never have a player on his team who was involved in an incident of domestic violence.
The 2 ladies in the other room that came over into the room said that they were interviewed by the police and never contacted by anyone ever again to talk about it. So
let's move past that. So we don't know exactly what happened. So those were the legal ramifications.
So here's my point.
Let's go.
Comfort level. The Seattle Seahawks feel they did their due diligence. We can all, and you can have your opinion that they didn't do enough, that they didn't talk to enough people or the people more directly involved in this. And if you want to criticize them for that, that's fine. But here's where I'm talking about your comfort level with the situation. If they feel they did enough of an investigation to where they don't feel that he hit her, because he says he didn't, and it was not a domestic violence charge on his record, and if they're comfortable with that, then they're going to say, listen, we abhor domestic violence. If we found out anybody touched a woman or there was domestic violence, they'd be off the team. And Snyder even said, we've done that before. So if you're comfortable that it didn't happen in your investigation, no matter what anybody else thinks, nobody else is picking the guy except a team. And if that team is comfortable with him, then this player should have every right to be picked. He should have every right to be picked by a team. And every team should have the right, if they don't want to pick him. This guy was off a lot of teams' boards. He was just off the boards. Wasn't brought back. So yes, he has the right. Going through this, the legal system is done. Domestic violence isn't on his record, no matter what you want to think about it. So the team investigates. They're comfortable with it. He has a right to be picked up by a team without question. And without question, each team can say, off our board, sorry, not taking you.
Right.
You can say you have every right to work in the NFL, but I don't have to take you. And if nobody takes you, you can go earn a living doing something else.
Let me reframe the question. Let's say there's a player who is convicted in college, and let's say that player, sir, I'm making up a name, Tom Smith, and that player serves winds up on some sort of probation or whatever it is. Because one of the extraordinarily disappointing things that I think many of us have learned through this process is how difficult what difficult time the legal system has with cases of domestic violence. So let's just say the player is not in jail, is eligible to play, wants to play, and is a good player.
But did commit this act.
But did commit the act.
Yes.
Not that the team has done the due diligence and found that he didn't.
Right.
But that everyone acknowledges that he did. Like Ray Rice, right? I mean, there's a video. Ray Rice can't say he didn't do it.
Right.
So let's say there's a player who was involved in a case like this and unquestionably did do it. Mm-hmm. I'm now not talking about the team. I'm talking about the world, all of us at large, those of us who are sitting on the outside and watching this. I've seen enormous criticism of the Seahawks for this.
Right.
And I understand that. Now, part of the criticism might be of the investigation. What do you mean you did an investigation and you didn't ask her and you didn't ask her and you didn't ask her? Right. Okay, I get that part. Let's put that aside.
Okay.
Let's say the facts are not in dispute. Do you criticize any team for drafting that player?
I don't. If I'm running a team, I'm not taking him. He's off my board. So that's when it comes down to what's your comfort level of, do you feel comfortable taking this guy? Now you've changed the scenario, so let's not put this name involved.
It's a whole other person.
You changed the scenario where someone did commit this act, did his time, whatever that was, and now he's done with it. So just like we talked about a Michael Vick with the despicable act that he went through and served jail for, and any player like that who did their time and did commit domestic violence, they do have a right to work again. But you know what? I have a right to run a team and say, you're not coming and working for this team. And that would be my answer. If there would be no question, if this was a player in the draft, he'd be off my board. It's just like when the Greg Hardy situation. How many teams wouldn't even think about bringing him in? And he is arguably one of, if not the best pass rusher in the game, or right near the top. Mm-hmm. And he was just off board. So does he have a right to work in the NFL? Absolutely. Absolutely. And every team has a right to say, you can work in the NFL, you ain't working for me. And if I'm running a team and someone has domestic violence on their ledger, there's a line for everybody, and that's a line for me. You're off the board.
To me, it's an interesting question because you're correct. That's each individual team then the right to make its own individual decision. Right. And then the fans are supposed to react however they choose.
Right.
I don't know what I would think. I'm trying to think if the team I root for had made that decision.
What if you run the team?
It's an interesting question.
Sure, yeah.
I think that you don't want that to be associated with you.
Because there are teams,
and I hate to even bring the self-serving side of it, but you have a brand and you are now bringing that in. I hate to be as pragmatic as this sounds, because obviously incidents like that or issues like this are much more important than the dollars associated with your brand, but that is a factor.
There's nothing wrong with you thinking of the possible sponsors that may not want to be involved with you if you do that.
And just what it is to have your brand now associated with that person.
The Greg Hardy was a perfect case. To me, is many teams said, yeah, he can work in the NFL, but not here. And Jerry Jones said, he can work in the NFL and he can come work here.
The thing about Greg Hardy is that the facts to at least some degree are in dispute, right?
Yes.
He's trying to have his record expunged.
He was convicted by a judge.
Yes. We had a right to a jury trial. We all went through that. The witness disappeared, and all of that. So whatever it is, I'm talking about in a case where their facts are not even remotely in dispute.
Right.
We know what happened. Let's say there's video. See, once there's video, that changes everything as well. Because now it is impossible not to feel emotional. It is impossible to be reasonable. Because when you see it, no matter how awful you imagine something, it's worse when you see it.
An interesting scenario would be Ray Rice, 8 years ago. Now he hasn't been the running back he's been. He doesn't have a team. He's probably not going to get a team. We'll see. I have no idea.
You think he'll never play again?
I don't think he will. And part of it is, remember how I said about talent can make you, kind of justify it? His talent level isn't there anymore to make you say, yeah, I'm going to bring that here. That's why I said when he was playing well, that would have been an interesting scenario. I guess Greg Hardy is that case. Greg Hardy, again, while most people read the report and are just disgusted by it, as well you should be, most people didn't want to bring him in. Jerry Jones, and let's be honest, he brought him in because of what he can do on the field. You can talk about all the groups you have to help and this and that. He brought him in because he can sack the quarterback. So that's where other teams said no. So there's your line of even as the better you are, the more leeway you get. And leeway in this case would be one team wants you, you're in the NFL.
It's an interesting question to me. What is the appropriate response in this case? What would be the right way to handle this? What would you, and I'm talking now to you, whomever you are, wherever you are, whatever your feeling is, if there is a player who, in another case, I'm not talking about this one, but one in which the facts are not in dispute, do you feel the punishment for that should be, well, he just can never play in the NFL? Can never play in the NFL. If that's how you feel, I'm cool with that. I'm more than open to having that conversation with you. If you don't feel that way, then is drafting that player deserving of criticism? If you think, well, yeah, I mean, so long as he serves his time and all that, then he should be allowed to play, well, then the team's going to draft him. Right? Yep. The team's going to bring in a good player if they can. That's what teams do. So I find it really interesting. Again, much of the criticism yesterday may very well and justifiably have been questioning just how extensive this extensive investigation really was.
Did you want to make it extensive enough so you could justify your pick?
I get that part of it fully. But to me, there are more interesting questions than that one.
I agree.
And I look forward to the reaction.
Mike and Mike.
ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
Throw to the plate, safe at the plate!
right through the World Series.
For the third time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
We have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio. The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
You know, yesterday and throughout much of this week when we have spent a lot of time talking about Manny Pacquiao and the shoulder injury he suffered, training for his fight against Floyd Mayweather, and the question of, well, what should have been done, what was the right way to handle an injury that takes place during training that clearly may or will have an effect on the outcome of the fight. We heard from so many people, you need to talk to George Foreman, one of the legendary fighters in history, and something that many people remember and some may not, is that prior to one of the most famous fights, the Rumble in the Jungle with Ali and Zaire, 8 days before the fight was scheduled, September 24th, 1974, Foreman suffered a cut above his eye, forcing postponement of the match for a month. It affected his ability to train because he couldn't spar in the build-up to the fight and risk the cut being reopened. George Foreman was 25 years old at the time. Ali was 32. So no better way to get the latest on this and more from one of the great figures in the history of boxing, George Foreman, who joins us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Big George, Mike, and Mike, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing fine here in Texas.
A pleasure to talk to you. So take us back to that. Take us back to when you suffered the cut above the eye at some 41 years ago. You suffered the cut above the eye. What were the thoughts that went through your mind, and what was the process by which that fight wound up being postponed?
You know, athletes, we're pretty superstitious anyway, especially back in those days. I'd never been defeated, never had really any serious injuries. Then all of a sudden, piece by piece, I'm falling apart. So you start thinking, something has happened to me. Something mysterious is starting to happen to me. So you go through that phase. Then you have to go, and you can't get stitches. I have to put butterflies on them with tape and just sit there for 10 days and not sweat. Then go back into training. But the point was the show must go on.
Well, to that extent, because it was delayed a month, How much pressure was there on you and your camp to not delay it at all?
Oh, I had meetings, especially with government officials. This fight was scheduled for a certain time, and I didn't really realize, but they even had it scheduled just before the rain season. So before the rain started to come. So it was all about do it now or it's not going to be done. And, hey, I had the $5 million already spent, so to speak. So it wasn't like I was going to say, oh, let's stop this thing.
So how did it turn out? How did it wind up getting postponed a month?
Well, the idea is that I needed to get out of there and just call the fight off, and that was not going to happen. So, and I needed to, the next suggestion was go into Belgium and just rest and get the proper doctors. And they were fearful if I left the country. I was fearful if we left the country, the fight would never happen. So I just sat there for a whole month, just letting myself heal. Isn't that strange how you can heal when you're young like that? And the next thing you know, I was ready for a boxing match, in my mind anyway.
And ultimately would get knocked out in the 8th round by Ali in that legendary fight.
You didn't have to say that.
I didn't.
I told him, George, don't bring that part up, and yet he felt he needed to.
It is unfortunately a part.
You should keep quiet. Then it turned into the rope-a-dope. But the most magnificent thing, the cut was never open again.
So the cut never came open again. It was not a factor in the fight. Ali would win the fight. Of course, George Foreman would go on to an enormous career and a whole second chapter, and now a third act in his career with a variety of products. We'll get to that in a moment. The great George Foreman is with us on Mike and Mike. But so now let's take it to the present day. You got Manny Pacquiao training, and apparently 2 weeks or thereabouts before the fight, he suffers a shoulder injury significant enough that he's taking a variety of different painkillers and pain blockers and all of that. In your view, if you suffer an injury like that, should they have postponed this fight so that he could be at his best?
Nah, because that's part of boxing. You go through boxing, and especially as an athlete, you just told the story of this basketball player, Connolly. I was listening on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer to everything. He got his face crushed in. What is he doing? Getting out there leading his team. He's the motor to the team to get a win. No, and the one thing about sports I learned after the Ali fight, you're going to always be injured. Something is always going to be wrong. When I go into a fight and I was in perfect health, no swollen, no broken hands, and I knew something was wrong then. So it was like you want to go out and break something just to get better.
And also, George, on that, and people look at it, but it's part of life. Manny Pacquiao's 36 years old, so he's an athlete that wants to fight through some pain. But let's not close our eyes to an $80 million payday, which is going to make an older fighter say, "There's no way I'm letting this chance slip by." How much does that go through your mind?
And that's the most important part. You think that I fought Evander Holyfield when I was about 41. Don't think I didn't have to. I had arthroscopic surgery about a month earlier. I disguised it. I didn't let anybody know because the show must go on. All these people are flying in. It wasn't like a halfback or fullback could take my place. I had to show up. I had to box. All the hotels were booked. And you decide, look, pain is one thing, but this event is bigger than all that, and you go for it.
Mike and Mike, the great George Foreman is with us. So overall, do you think this past weekend and the way it's kind of turned out, and there's now class action lawsuits filed, and I don't know where any of that will go, do you think this whole thing was in retrospect, a good weekend for boxing or a bad weekend for boxing?
It was probably the greatest weekend we've had for boxing in, I don't know, close to 40 years. I'm happy about it.
Right.
I'd like to see it happen again, even if it's other boxers. It was great for boxing. The fight was just a boxing match, don't get me wrong. But the event, the ticket sold, the pay-per-view, boxing needed it. And I'm thankful for Pacquiao to go on with the boxing match. I'm happy for it.
What do you think in your mind, George, outside of these once, in this case, in the 5 years it took to get this big pay-per-view together, what do you think boxing needs the most to get it more mainstream on a consistent basis?
The first thing, we don't need to complain about anything other than the boxing match. Talk about it. It'll be talked about from years to come. It didn't make a statement. I mean, we didn't leave out with a rope-a-dope. and what the Phantom Punch. We didn't leave out. The writers didn't take up on it. The writers need to write something about it. That didn't happen, but we got to celebrate that we had it and smoothly go on, and not to say anything about any athlete. So the next boxing match would be everybody would jump on board and say, let's do it again. And I have nothing critical to say about the match, nothing at all.
And George, I guess a final thought. You got Floyd Mayweather now approaching Rocky Marciano's hallowed 49-0 record, and he has taken on all comers, I guess, and has been undefeated. He has a defensive style that some people find a little unsatisfying, but basically nobody can hit him. What do you think his legacy? What is his place in boxing history?
He's already done that. He's got a great spot. I call him a defensive genius. But, it's not like you got to have Alka-Seltzers to watch him, his offense. I mean, it's just not going to happen. But he's a defensive genius, and I like him. I've enjoyed his career. I've seen him grow as a person, grow as a fighter, rename himself from Pretty Boy to Money Mayweather. He's been good for boxing. And a lot of people come out just to see him get beat. They haven't seen it, of course, but they come out for that purpose.
All right, George, as Greeny mentioned before, you've gone on to have more than a few acts since you're boxing. I still have the Foreman grill. I still have it, still use it, still love it. But now this George Foreman's Butcher Shop. Tell us about this that I'm going to now get into.
Yeah, gfbutchershop.com. Taking orders right now. All of the kids, especially in college, they were asking me, you got a grill. What is the proper piece of meat? And we have chicken, and all kind of things that you can put on the grill. You go to the website, it'll be delivered to your house, get in with your buddies, and you'll have enough meat for a month. And I wanted to make certain I serve and keep something going so that the brand will stay alive. The grill, now the butcher shop. You can have it right at your door.
gfbutchershop.com, the great George Foreman. Pleasure to talk to you, George. Thank you so much for the time this morning.
Thanks, George. Back at you. God bless.
Take care. George Foreman.
Wow, how do you not love
one-time or multiple-time heavyweight champion of the world. I'm just barely old enough to remember him in his first incarnation. For those who don't remember, there were really sort of two different George Foreman eras. The George Foreman of the 70s, who was sullen and scary.
I'm telling you, that's exactly what I was going to say. You got to look at George. You got to look at his body and his face, and he scares you to death. Didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he had that look about him that he was going to kill you.
And they thought he was going to knock out Ali, and Ali beat him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went away for a while. He came back, and he came back as this sort of lovable grandfatherly figure. And won another title, as he talked about there, and then stayed alive for a long time.
Wonderful, lovable pitchman.
I think one of the more successful pitchmen we've ever seen.
Without question. Yeah. Without question.
Great personality.
Yes. Yeah.
An enormous personality on Foreman. But we thought that was relevant because, he suffers the eye injury 8 days before the fight. He can't train. You just heard him say he couldn't sweat. And
if you read the story, there was mega fight from the Ali side of saying this fight is not getting postponed at all, and George knew it had to be postponed, but was hoping it wasn't going to go away because, as he said, and you heard him say about $5 million. Now we're talking about $80 million. That's why I'll continue to say most people, if you're in Manny Pacquiao's shoes, are going to fight.
The best of Mike and Mike.
We'll have Isiah Thomas on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline in just a few minutes. He has been named president and partial owner of the WNBA's New York Liberty, a move that raised a lot of eyebrows yesterday. We'll get his perspective on it directly. And Pedro Martinez will be in our studio, one of the great pitchers of all time. Looking forward to that. Winning Word in the Morning is on the way just a minute from now. Now, something has come up. You asked me earlier this morning.
Yes.
In our conversation about Blake Griffin versus Steph Curry.
Yeah, we did the redraft of Harden, Curry, and Blake Griffin all coming out in the same draft in 09. How would you draft them now? And then I changed it. I said, if you could morph into either Steph Curry or Blake Griffin, who would you rather physically be? Consider one of the greatest shooters in the NBA, maybe possibly toward all time, or one of the great athletes at 6'10". And we both said Blake Griffin. Because I want to be that good of an athlete.
For all the obvious reasons. I want to be the biggest, strongest guy and be able to dunk and clap my heels together on top of the rim.
Mm-hmm.
You just brought up something.
Yes, I did.
I don't know why I didn't know this, but I didn't.
You did not. Steph Curry, one of the things you love to do is golf. Steph Curry, reportedly, is a scratch golfer.
And Nick Nate tells me, we have a feature that Nick Nate puts together for us on social. Again, Nick Nate's our new social, in charge of all of our social director for all of our social media, at Mike and Mike on Twitter, at ESPN Mike and Mike on Instagram. And he said he does a thing called drop the mic. So we'll have people make like bold statements and then drop the mic. He said Steph Curry in his hot take with Mike and Mike and his drop the mic said that he would beat Tiger Woods in golf. Did he really say that? That he would beat Tiger?
Beat Tiger Woods. So if he's a scratch golfer,
that might change my opinion.
Does that change your mind?
You know, I would love. Stevie asked me last night at dinner. So Stevie and I played a little golf yesterday. I hit the ball a little bit. 12-year-old son. And he said to me, Dad, who would you trade places with if you could trade places with anyone? And I said, and I mean this, for the day the day that my family starts, I think your perspective on this changes. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't trade places with anybody because I wouldn't, if it meant not having my family, nothing would be worth that. He said to me, Dad, how about for a day? I said, Rory McIlroy, just like that, or without even thinking about it. Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, or just one of these, to me, McIlroy right now, clearly the best player in the world. For one day, I'd love to know what it's like to be the best golfer in the world.
One day?
Yeah.
One day I'd be, I think, LeBron.
See, that's what Stevie would have said.
For one day,
he's a basketball player.
Considered the best basketball player, be that big, that athletic. I mean, I know
that wouldn't be bad either. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't sound bad to me.
Yeah.
Who could, if you could trade places with anyone for a day? Because there are a lot of people. I mean, there's real good-looking movie stars that all the women go crazy for, whether it's Ansel Elgort or George Clooney, or depending upon your age.
Bill Gates, and then clean out his account.
No, they can't. No, can't take it with you.
I can't take it with me.
Can't take it with you.
I can still be here for one day and do an ungodly amount of spending on that day.
But you can't keep the things you buy.
Yeah. Yeah, then I wouldn't do that.
No, wouldn't do that. No, that wouldn't even enter my...
No.
If you said I could trade lives with someone and I had to, I might start there.
Yeah, I might start there is exactly right.
I used to think that the best thing in the world would be the handsomest person in the world. I've definitely changed my perspective. Being the richest person in the world would be better.
Rich is nice.
Yeah.
Do a lot of good with the money.
As Chris Rock once said, money will turn a bald spot into a part. So you can if you got money, it works out for you. Okay, let's talk about what was without question the best moment in sports.
Yes,
yesterday.
It was.
Mike and Mike in a fresh take brought to you by Subway. Discover the new Subway Chipotle Chicken Melt with new guacamole. Subway, eat fresh. The best moment in sports last night did not come on a field or on the ice or on a court. It came in a ballroom in Manhattan where they had the sports Emmys, and ESPN had a big night at there. They won. We won 11 Emmys, and our old boss and leader, the former president of ESPN, a good friend of both of us, George Bodenheimer, was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, which is great. And then they gave the Emmy, the Sports Emmy for Best Studio Host, and they gave it to Ernie Johnson.
Yes, they did.
From TNT. Now, Ernie Johnson is tremendous.
Yeah, I believe it's his third time winning that award,
He's an excellent talent.
Fantastic.
In addition to being a really, really good person, he's an excellent talent. I'm very surprised he won. Stuart Scott was nominated in that category. I remain absolutely flabbergasted that he did not win. That said, it did lead to an absolutely beautiful moment. Stewart was honored separately at the Sports Emmys last night, and his daughters, Taylor and Sydney, were there. And that led to this moment when Ernie Johnson was on stage accepting his Emmy.
For this, there's only one place it belongs, and that's on the mantle at Stuart Scott's house. So if the girls could come up, please. This is not for me. Look, like a lot of people in this room, I love your dad. And having gone through cancer, and he and I would text back and forth, and I would just tell him, and I'll tell Shelley the same thing, look, you may have cancer, but it doesn't have you. And you just fight, and you just lean in on people who love you. We love Stuart Scott. This is your Emmy.
It's just beautiful. I mean, it's just beautifully done. It's such a classy gesture. He's such a classy person. It doesn't surprise me at all that he would do something like that. The girls, by the way, and I've mentioned this on the air many times, they love interacting with people who loved their dad. They are on Twitter. They have their own Twitter account. It is at Tay and Sid. Their names are Taylor and Sydney, and they're spelled not sort of an unusual way. It's TAEANDSYD. That's the Twitter account, and if you send them a note, they will write you back. They interact constantly with people who send nice notes about their dad, about his book. They've been great.
They've been to a number of places accepting things on their father's behalf, and here again last night they were, and it was. They've been incredible and a great move. And anybody that knows Ernie isn't shocked at all by this move. He's one of the classiest guys out there who had his own, obviously, battles with cancer. And he and his wife Cheryl have adopted 4 kids, one with muscular dystrophy who is on a ventilator, lives at home. But they did a piece on that, an incredible relationship there. He's just such an impressive guy, deserving of the awards he gets, and then the classy move, certainly everybody would say, okay, Ernie did that, yeah. We could see Ernie doing that, absolutely.
Yes, so a beautiful gesture, a beautiful, just a terrific moment all the way around, and I'm thrilled that it happened. And again, I'm sure it made Taylor and Sydney feel good, and it certainly made everyone here at ESPN feel good. So thank you to Ernie Johnson for providing what I thought was the best night, best moment of a very busy night in the world of sports. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Now, let's get to the maybe most important business of the day.
Off the top.
That's not the one I meant to hit. Hold on one second. Here's the other one.
Mike and Mike. The ESPYs and you.
That's one of those moments that I'd love to blame someone else.
That's all you.
There's no one for me to blame. I have my own board right here.
Right there.
I can play any number of different sound bites. I got effects. Right, I got that. I got my off-the-top dry open, which I just hit for no reason whatsoever.
Greeny loves to be in control, so there's the board for him to be in control, and there you go.
If you're scoring at home, score that one E1.
Yep.
That one's on me.
Yes, it is.
I hit the wrong button.
Yeah, you did.
But this is the moment for the ESPYs sweepstakes. You'll be listening right here. We're going to give you the word and your chance to win this fabulous experience at the ESPYs. It's all presented by AutoZone. They are jumped in here with a presenting sponsorship, and we appreciate it very much. They're making it possible for us to send 4 winners, each with a guest, to L.A. this July. You're going to get to walk the red carpet with the biggest celebrities in sports. You're going to get to go to the after party. Should be an unforgettable experience for a sports fan. And all you have to do is get the winning word, which I'm going to give you, and then enter it all 3 ways every day, the rest of this week and next. And Golic's going to give you those. The word this morning is Conley. As in Mike Conley Jr., who toughed it out last night with a broken face. Conley. Conley is the word, and there are 3 ways to enter.
Only 3 ways, but you can enter all 3 ways. So you enter 3 ways, and you're going to be registered if you call 855-ESPN-WIN. That's 855-377-6946. That's one entry. Second entry, you can text to 777-000, 777-000. Now you're registered twice. Register that third time at ESPNradio.com. Now, 3 entries you have with the winning word of Conley, as Greeny said, for an unforgettable trip culminated by walking the red carpet with some of the biggest names in all of sports and entertainment.
All right. Again, enter all 3 ways every day, and those are the only 3 ways. The reason we keep saying that is because every single day we will get people tweeting the word at us and emailing the word to us. And we want you to have a chance to win. And if you do either of those 2 things, you're not entered. Or at least by that means you're not entered. So we certainly invite you to enter the 3 different ways, call, click, or text, that you can. Isiah Thomas will join us in a couple of minutes. Plenty of basketball to talk about as well after this word from LifeLock. And a not-so-fun fact, Mike, that years ago I was a victim of identity theft. Took me years to get everything straightened out, including at one point I was denied trying to get an apartment when my credit otherwise would have been perfect. It was an extraordinarily difficult situation. Since then, I've signed up with LifeLock, an industry leader in identity theft protection.
Yep, their innovative LifeLock Ultimate Plus service goes beyond just monitoring ATM and credit card transactions. It provides protection for your identity, bank, and retirement accounts, credit cards, even the equity in your home. Listen, nobody can stop all identity theft. Nobody can monitor transactions at every business. But LifeLock Ultimate Plus provides comprehensive identity theft protection. You can sleep easier knowing you have LifeLock Ultimate Plus. Help protect yourself right now. Visit LifeLock.com. Enter the promo code Mike. Save yourself 10% on your LifeLock Ultimate Plus membership. That's promo code Mike at LifeLock.com to get our special 10% discount, LifeLock.com.
All right, Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. We should have Isiah Thomas for you shortly, again, in a move that came as an enormous surprise to a lot of people. He was named yesterday the new president of the WNBA's New York Liberty and a part owner of that team. Now that has to go through an approval process by the WNBA's Board of Governors. We'll see where that goes. Again, we'll talk about that with Isiah Thomas when he joins us. We expect in just a minute or 2. In the meantime, surprising, all the stories right now in the 4 different series in the NBA are about point guards.
Yes, they are.
Conley comes back last night. Memphis wins. Wall, surprisingly, last night doesn't play. Washington loses.
Saw him fall on his wrist in game 1, and I saw him grab it right away, and I was trying to see how he hurt it, but then he kept playing, and then he was out the next game, so obviously he stung it more than I thought.
Meanwhile, in the other series, Steph Curry, they're saying is 50-50 to play tonight for the Clippers. And Derrick Rose says he's fine after the shoulder stinger the other day. So the point guards are the stories really right now in all 4 series.
And I look forward again to Game 2, Cleveland and Chicago. One of the subsets of that is just when Derrick Rose and Kyrie Irving were both taking over for their respective teams in Game 1. Pretty impressive, maybe reminiscent of another point guard we know from back in the day.
A lot of people were comparing Steph Curry's performance the other night, Steph Curry, Chris Paul's performance the other night in that Game 7 to Isiah Thomas's legendary performance in Game 6 of the NBA Finals once upon a time. And yesterday, a very interesting day for Isiah Thomas, who's been doing work at Turner, analyzing basketball, and is named yesterday the new president and part owner of the WNBA's New York Liberty. Here with that and more is Isiah Thomas on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Isiah, Mike, and Mike, how are you this morning?
I am great. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. We're doing well. I certainly want to get your perspective on what happened yesterday. But just quickly, while we do have you on that subject, a lot of people watched what CP3 did on Saturday night on one leg, basically carrying his team to a win, and went, harkened back to you in the late 80s in that Game 6 against the Lakers. Were you thinking about it when you were watching that?
Absolutely. I was thinking about it, and he was so inspirational and so heroic in those moments. And every time he grabbed his hamstring, you can just feel and see the pain that he was experiencing. But to have him rise to the moment and continue to play and continue to make shots, not only be out on the floor, but be effective while he was out on the floor. That was beautiful, and that's one of those moments that I always will remember about these playoffs this season.
Yeah, however far it goes, I don't care what round it was. To me, that was a signature performance. Okay, let's get down to the business here. I think a lot of people reacted with a good deal of surprise when it was announced yesterday that you will be the president and partial owner of the WNBA's New York Liberty. Again, that is pending approval by the WNBA's Board of Governors. What made you personally, Isiah, decide this was something you wanted to do?
I would say this in terms of all the athletes, who love their sport and are passionate about their sport. I love the game of basketball, and I do not view it through a gender lens. So anytime that I'm able to talk about basketball, be around basketball, be in the gym, I just love it. So having the opportunity to work for the WNBA, I look at where basketball is going in this country, and Greeny, you know this more than anyone. 20 years ago, when Jordan came into our league, it was all about the dunk. It was all about athleticism. It was all about beauty in the air. But before, it was a game that was played on the ground. It was about passing. It was about cutting. It was about the fundamentals of the game, and that's where our game. That's what basketball is going back to. Steph Curry was the MVP of the NBA, and we talked about his shot making, his ball handling. We talk about San Antonio in terms of their beautiful play. But when you look at the women's game, that is exactly how the women play the game. They play it below the rim. It's all about fundamentals. It's all about passing. It's all about cutting, and it's all about making shots from the perimeter and inside the paint. 20 years ago or 15 years ago, the women's game was said that it wasn't pleasing because they couldn't dunk and they didn't have the athleticism that the men have. Well, the game has changed, and now I think it's gotten to a place where it's on a level playing field. And so I hope everyone will come out and view WNBA games and view women's games.
What it does do, Isiah, is put you back in New York and back in a relationship with James Dolan, who in November of 2013 told the Post that he said, I don't see him coming back to New York. I couldn't do that to him, and I couldn't do that to the organization. Now you're back. What's changed?
Well, I can never speak for Mr. Dolan. I'm happy to be back, working in the game of basketball. But, I've worked in college. I've worked for the NC2A, Turner, NBA TV. And, we were talking maybe 4 months ago about the Liberty. He asked my opinion about the game. He asked my opinion about, what we can do to make the product a little better. And I was consulting about the Liberty 3 or 4 months ago and working with Kristen Burnett. And Afterwards, after a couple of months, we just decided to make it official. So here we are.
Mike and Isiah Thomas. Now, it is just for the record a statement of fact. But for those who do not know, that in 2007, when you were coaching the Knicks, a former team executive alleged that you had sexually harassed her. The team wound up being found liable for $11.6 million in damages. Many of the fans of WNBA teams and games are women. So how should fans of the New York Liberty reconcile your position with that team and the sexual harassment history with you back in your days with the Knicks?
So let me unpack that question because you said team, and yes, I was with the team, the New York Knicks. I was president of the New York Knicks. I was not the president of Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden is a corporation, and you just said Madison Square Garden was the team. So when the jury had an opportunity to fine, they fined Madison Square Garden. I was not liable or personally held for anything. So the jury found no findings. And again, I've worked in the NCAA, I've worked at NBA TV, Turner. So anyone who's vetted this has looked at it and have come out and found that, as the jury found, there were no findings in terms of Isiah Thomas.
Fair enough. The optics of the situation, though, in some people's mind are going to remain. So I guess I would just then rephrase the question. What is your message to fans of the Liberty?
The message to fans of the Liberty, come out and enjoy the game. Come out and watch. Come out and watch Tina Charles. Come out and watch Swing Cash. Bill Laimbeer, 3-time WNBA champion. There are great things that are happening in the women's game. I'm a fan of the women's game. I watch all basketball, so I am letting everyone know, just as you at ESPN is letting everyone know that, hey, there's a great movement that's happening in this country, and it's called women's basketball. And people should come and watch it and give it the opportunity that they've given the men, the men on that side of the table. We go out and we watch the men play beautiful basketball, and we talk about it. We talk about the game, how beautiful it is. Well, the women are playing the same kind of game, and I just hope people come out and watch. That's my message. Come watch it.
And that's your message to the fans. Then what will your message be if you have to go before a board? As WNBA President Laura Ritchie said, if you are going to be a part owner, that has to be approved through that process. And if you're in front of that board, what will be your message to them on why you should be a part owner of that team?
My knowledge for the game of the sport and what I've done in the sport and the knowledge that I think I can pass on to everyone, I think they can benefit from it, and I think people have benefited from it. If you speak into false allegations, and I emphasize false allegations, those have been addressed, and I will continue to address them. I've always maintained my innocence. And, you know, if people want to continue to believe in the falsities, I can't speak to that. I can only speak to the facts.
Madison Square Garden released a statement yesterday saying we did not believe the allegations then, we do not believe them now, and announcing your coming on board. Then of course, the New York Liberty are owned by the same group and the same person ultimately that owns the New York Knicks, where you do have a history. How would you describe your interest in returning to the NBA someday and perhaps to the Knicks?
My interest is basketball, and you know, I remember, Golic, I saw you in San Antonio. I think you were at an awards banquet or something. You were out there with your son. Mm-hmm. And I remember, you know, briefly looking at your interaction with your son. And I listened to Chris Carter talk, and you guys talked every day. I've known Chris since he was a very young man. The passion that I think we all have for our sports. We will go to a high school game. We just love it, and I know I love it. And I hope that passion and that intensity comes through. And the reason why I want to be involved, I just love what I do. I just love the game, and it truly is that simple. I just love it. So,
which is great. Do you have an interest in getting back to the NBA though? If an opportunity were to present itself, is that something you would like?
I am interested in basketball. Period. So you never know where life takes you. I make no plans. I didn't plan to end up here, and none of us know where we're going to be 5-10 years from now. We just hope that we're all happy and healthy, but we never really know. So wherever my life path and journey continues to take me, I just hope that I can be happy and joyful and cheerful, and as I've always been.
Well, if you can bring more attention and more success to the WNBA, then certainly everyone would agree that would be a good outcome from this. Isiah, thank you for the time this morning. Best of luck.
Hey, thank you, and thank you for giving me time. I watch you guys every morning, and thanks for waking me up.
Thanks, Isiah. Thanks, Isiah. Isiah Thomas.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
All right, it is a pleasure for us to welcome into our studio now one of the genuinely great pitchers in the history of Major League Baseball, a world champion, a Hall of Famer, and with now the author of his new book, which is called Pedro. The great Pedro Martinez is in our studio. What a pleasure to have you here. How are you, Pedro?
Well, thank you. Good morning to you guys. I know for you guys it's something you're accustomed to doing, but for me,
a little early.
Early in the morning. Early in the morning is not normal.
Bobbleheads, though, huh?
Yeah. The first one I have in front of me is Chris Archer. I think this kid is special.
Si quieres,
I like watching him pitch.
También, si quieres, podemos hablar en español y el gordo aquí no entiende nada. So, si es posible, si es mejor para eso.
He called me fat, didn't he?
Sí.
Yeah.
All right, the great Pedro Martinez. All right, so many things. I've heard you interviewed so many different places, this week as you're promoting the book. Again, the new book is out. It's called Pedro. Here's one of the things I've always been fascinated by. And we see guys, Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens, huge hulking guys, and you watch the amount of velocity they're able to generate, and that doesn't come as a surprise. And then we see someone like you, who obviously, just your physical stature is so much smaller. How would you describe your ability to generate the velocity? Where did that come from, your ability to throw as hard as you did, as well as you did at your size?
Well, first of all, you're born with something special in you, and I think my biggest deal was flexibility and balance. I wasn't too big up on top. I wasn't small down below, and not only that, I became a patch of so many good pitchers, so many good bodies that I saw pitching. And I was a student of the game. I'm still a student of the game. I love watching mechanics. I love breaking down statures and the guys that are pitching, their mechanics. I love searching for little things, and I remember because of the struggles early in my career, I had to pretty much run to the sources I could to try to fix my mechanics and stop blowing those fastballs up and in close to the chin, because they were getting me in trouble quite often. And even though it was youth, if you ask me exactly what was the difference, it was just that I didn't know how to do it properly. But I had to make some adjustments, and I'm glad I went to look at Maddox's head, the way Roger Clemens would use his legs, Maddox the head, grabbing the pinpoint control, how to use the changeup on one side and changeup on the other, John Smoltz, so many guys that I went to look at mechanically to compare myself and fix my mechanics, and that helped me out.
I bet a lot of guys that you went high and tight on were pretty happy you fixed your mechanics as well. I always love asking this of those that made it all the way to the top levels. You made it to the top level in baseball. At what point, at what age did it click in your head that you thought, I know I can pitch in Major League Baseball. I know I could pitch at the top level.
That I could pitch at the top level, I as soon as I breezed by A-ball and Double-A, and I saw actually the big league team, and I saw some of the guys pitching. Like I remember watching Tim Cruz pitching in one game, and he's 86, 87. And I'm like, oh my God, I throw 90s, in the mid 90s, and I look like I could be more deceiving than this guy is. And not disrespecting him, but I ran up to my brother and I said, bro, he pitches in the big leagues consistently. He goes, yeah, he's a veteran. I could do what he does. And my brother was like, no, it's not that simple. He's a veteran. He knows how to deal with different things. Adversity was one of the things that my brother was afraid of me being in the big leagues, because dealing with adversity early in your career is something I learned that could probably destroy your career as much as it could help it. And you know, I was hesitant to rush into conclusions, but at the same time, I felt like I had a chance.
The great Pedro Martinez in our studio again. His new book is called Pedro, looking back on his magnificent Hall of Fame career in Major League Baseball. You were a player that to watch you was to see extraordinary confidence, obviously, in what you did. And some might say more than confidence, cockiness, arrogance. Where do you, in your own mind, where is the line between confidence and arrogance?
I think probably they didn't know what I really had behind me. So they confuse those words, and instead of saying, well, he's determined, he's fearless, they use cockiness, and they probably use overconfidence, or something like that. But yes, I was confident, and I was, actually, I looked like cocky, but in reality, I was so intense, I was so determined to go out there, and I brought with me a lot of anger. A lot of anger every time I took the mound, because I knew I was pitching, but I also knew I was small, and there was nothing I could do with that. I was tempted to do some other things to get bigger, because I was seemingly the only thing that was stopping me from being in the big leagues was the way I looked.
Were you close to using PEDs?
I was tempted. I wasn't close, no, but I was tempted, because I wanted to build my body frame, and I wanted to fill up the uniform like the Dodgers wanted me. And, you know, I'm glad I didn't do it, and I'm glad someone else took a chance on me, because the Dodgers, even though I pitched in relief, and I pitched 107 innings for the Dodgers my first year, they wouldn't believe that I was a starter.
As far as, and we saw it earlier this season, well, we see it all the time in baseball, part of the unwritten rules is the retaliation of pitchers. And was there a different thought process for you when you were in the American League and the National League when you knew you had to get into the box, and the American League when you knew you didn't have to get into the batter's box?
You know, I wouldn't suggest to anybody to be as brave as I was. I would probably suggest to anybody that's going to do that to be careful. But I was not intimidated. I got hit. I remember getting hit over my pitching inside, and instead of taking one of my players down, which is something I did often, I hit your player. I didn't hit you. And they came after me, honestly. And I remember early in my career, you had a reason to probably second guess how I was throwing the pitches inside and all that. But at the end of the 96 season, after the first half, I think I was one of the best pitchers in the National League. And I had hit one guy all year. And my second one was Greg Jeffries. Intentional or not, you have to give me my props too, because 2 years before, you guys were trying to kill me because I didn't know how to throw the pitches inside. Now I got better. I hit one guy all year. And the second one is towards the end, at the end of September, my last outing. And I get thrown at twice for hitting that second guy all year. Now you're not looking at my numbers. You're looking at me as a person, and you're making your own judgment. But that's the reason I was always so angry, because people had really the easier choice to just go and judge you before they knew what really you were doing.
Mike and Mike again. Pedro Martinez' book, written with Michael Silverman, is called Pedro. It's available right now. Last thought, I could talk to you for 3 hours.
Gosh, absolutely.
Last thought, I think many of us who've never been there have this image of what baseball is to young boys growing up in the Dominican Republic. We've seen so many stars of the sport come from there. Can you describe what it is, what baseball is and means to a young kid growing up right now in the DR?
Well, that's the main reason why I wrote the book, because coming from where I come from, not too many people get to where I got. And you can pinpoint very few examples of people that made it from where I was in the shack under the mango tree to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, make a living for himself and his family, do so many things in life. To be sitting here with you guys, to me, is a great honor that I owe to baseball. I owe to my career. I owe to God. I owe to my parents, because that's the main message in there, is believe in your parents, believe in God, believe in your goals, be determined, work hard, go get it. It's not going to be handed out to you. You have to go get it, and sometimes claim it from someone that probably doesn't want it as bad as you do. And that's the message I want to relate to the people, that there's hope in every one of us, that we could do it. Don't listen to the adversities. Don't listen to the people that say, no, you can't. Those experts that supposedly know all those things, they can be wrong. Prove them wrong. I did that, and I want to relate that to the people. But growing up in the Dominican and coming up as a young child, really poor child, my biggest moment, and I want to let it be known always, and it's always going to be remembered. When I was 12, I was supposed to represent the Dominican Republic in one of the Little League World Series going to Puerto Rico, or at least compete for it. And I did not have 400 pesos. And my mom could not afford it. And I did it back-to-back years, and I couldn't make it because of the lack of economics that we had. And since then, I opened a foundation as soon as I got money, build a church to tell God, I thank you for everything you've done. And I went on to write that book to actually bring hope to the kids that are now looking up to us.
It's beautifully said.
That's fantastic.
The book is called Pedro. It's available now. What a pleasure to see you here. We'll do this again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That is great.
The great Pedro Martinez with us here on Mike and Mike.
This has been the best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNradio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Isn't this weather great, Golic?
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a day like this.
Oh, and we're doing it upright. Some Johnsonville brats on the grill, a cold drink in our hands, feet kicked up. This is how to live.
Yeah, can you imagine all those people who have to be inside working on a day like this?
Yeah, those poor people.
Oh, I'm just so glad you found those guys to fill in and take our place on the show today.
Wait, what? I thought you were going to get the guest host for today.
No, Greeny. I said I was going to get some root beer floats.
Well, then who's doing our show right now?
Well, that's not good. We better get back to the studio.
But Golic, the brats are ready.
Oh, man, Johnsonville brats, all that full, juicy flavor that comes from only premium cuts of pork. We could probably enjoy a couple of these before we head back, right?
I don't see why not. That static seems to be doing okay, and it's certainly not going anywhere.
Then neither are we. Pass me one of those Johnsonville brats.
Johnsonville, served with pride since 1945. Find delicious recipes for the grill at johnsonville.com.
Two of baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. That one is gone. The pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.